The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace grounds as William stood at the window of his private study, watching the gardeners tend to Kate's favorite rose garden. His hands trembled slightly as he held the letter from the royal physician, the words blurring through his unshed tears. The diagnosis had been devastating, but what broke his heart even more was watching Kate maintain her radiant smile through it all. 3 months had passed since that terrible day when Kate collapsed during a charity event. The world had watched as she was rushed to the hospital, and William had never felt so helpless. The woman who had been his anchor, his partner in everything, was facing the fight of her life. The doctors had been honest about her condition, a rare form of illness that progressed rapidly, leaving little time for the treatments that might help. Kate had insisted on continuing her royal duties despite the diagnosis. She appeared at events with the same grace and warmth that had made her beloved by millions around the world. Children still ran to her with flowers, elderly veterans still stood straighter in her presence, and communities still felt honored by her visits. But William could see the exhaustion behind her bright eyes, the way she gripped his arm a little tighter when she thought no one was looking. The palace had managed to keep the full extent of her condition private, releasing only carefully worded statements about her health. The public knew she was unwell, but they didn't know how serious it truly was. William and Kate had made this decision together, wanting to spare their children and the nation the full weight of their heartbreak until absolutely necessary. Their children, Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis, had sensed something was wrong despite their parents' efforts to maintain normalcy. George, being the eldest, had started asking more serious questions about his mother's frequent doctor visits. Charlotte had become unusually clingy, never wanting to leave Kate's side. And little Louis seemed to understand in his own innocent way that something precious was slipping away. The evening before, Kate had sat with William in their private sitting room, her head resting on his shoulder as they watched their children play in the garden below. She had spoken quietly about her fears, not for herself, but for him and the children. She worried about how they would manage without her guidance, about whether the children would remember her laugh, about whether William would find happiness again someday. William had held her close, breathing in the familiar scent of her hair, memorizing the feel of her in his arms. He had promised her things he wasn't sure he could deliver, that he would be strong, that he would help their children remember her in every beautiful detail, that he would continue the work they had started together. But, inside, he felt like he was drowning. The palace staff had noticed the change too. Mrs. Jenkins, Kate's longtime lady-in-waiting, had been seen wiping away tears when she thought no one was watching. The security team moved with extra care around the family, understanding that they were protecting something infinitely precious during its most vulnerable time. Even the dogs seemed to sense the heaviness in the air, staying closer to Kate than usual. Kate had begun writing letters, to her children for future birthdays and milestones, to William for moments when he might need her words, to the charities and organizations that had become like family to her. She wrote with the same thoughtfulness she brought to everything else, considering each word carefully, wanting to leave behind pieces of her love that could comfort others long after she was gone. The media had started to speculate more intensely about her condition as public appearances became less frequent. Royal correspondents noted the way William looked at her during their last joint engagement, the intensity in his gaze as if he was trying to memorize every moment. Photographers captured images of them holding hands a little tighter, walking a little slower, stealing private moments of connection even in public spaces. That morning, as William stood watching the gardeners, he thought about all the dreams they had shared. They had planned to grow old together, to see their children become adults, to travel the world on royal tours well into their golden years. They had talked about the kind of legacy they wanted to leave, the changes they wanted to make, the lives they wanted to touch. Now those dreams felt like distant stars, beautiful but unreachable. Kate appeared in the doorway behind him, moving quietly despite her illness. She had always been graceful, but now there was something almost ethereal about the way she moved, as if she was already becoming something more than earthly. She came to stand beside him at the window, slipping her hand into his without a word. Together they watched the roses blooming in the garden below, the same roses they had planted together in the early years of their marriage. Kate had chosen varieties that would bloom at different times throughout the year, ensuring there would always be color and beauty in their view. Now William realized she had given him a gift that would continue long after she was gone, a garden full of reminders of her love and foresight. The weight of what lay ahead pressed down on both of them. They knew that soon they would have to tell the children the full truth, that they would have to prepare the nation for goodbye, that they would have to find the strength to face each day knowing their time together was measured in weeks rather than years. But in that quiet moment by the window, with the morning sun warming their joined hands, they simply stood together and loved each other with the fierce intensity of people who know that love is all they have left to give. The decision to tell their children came on a Tuesday afternoon when Charlotte asked why Mama was so tired all the time. Kate and William had been dreading this moment, but they knew their children deserved honesty delivered with love rather than discovering the truth through whispered conversations or overheard phone calls. They gathered the children in Kate's favorite sitting room, the one overlooking the garden where they had spent countless happy afternoons. George sat cross-legged on the carpet, his serious 11-year-old face already showing concern. Charlotte curled up next to Kate on the sofa, her small hand automatically reaching for her mother's. Louis, barely understanding but sensing the gravity of the moment, climbed onto William's lap. Kate spoke first, her voice gentle but steady. She told them that she was very sick, sicker than they had realized, and that the doctors were doing everything they could to help her feel better. She explained that sometimes people get illnesses that are very hard to fight, and that her body was getting more tired each day. The children listened with the focused attention that only comes when young hearts sense something life-changing is happening. George was the first to ask the question they had all been thinking. "Are you going to die, Mama?" His voice cracked slightly, and Kate felt her heart break at the adult worry in his young eyes. She had always promised her children honesty, and she wouldn't break that promise now, even when the truth was almost unbearable to speak. Kate reached for George's hand, creating a chain of connection between all five of them. She told them that yes, she might die, and that if she did, it wouldn't be because she wanted to leave them or because they had done anything wrong. She explained that sometimes bodies just stop working properly, no matter how much love surrounds them or how hard people fight to get better. Charlotte began to cry, the kind of deep, heartbroken sobs that come from a 9-year-old trying to understand why the world suddenly feels unsafe. Kate pulled her daughter close, and William moved to wrap his arms around all of them, creating a cocoon of family love in the face of an impossible situation. Louis didn't fully understand what death meant, but he cried too, responding to the sadness around him with the pure empathy of a 4-year-old heart. They stayed like that for a long time, crying together and holding each other. Kate answered their questions as best she could, about what would happen to them, about whether she would be in pain, about whether they would see her again. William found his voice when the children asked who would take care of them, assuring them that he would always be there, that their grandparents and aunts and uncles would help, that they would never be alone. The conversation continued over the following days as the children processed the information and came back with new questions and fears. George worried about becoming king too early and whether he would be ready for such responsibility. Charlotte asked if she could come live in heaven with Mama when she was old. Louis wanted to know if Mama would still be able to see him playing football. Each question was a small knife in their parents' hearts, but Kate and William answered with patience and love, determined to help their children navigate this impossible situation. Kate began spending even more focused time with each child individually, creating special memories and traditions they could carry forward. She baked Charlotte's favorite biscuits while teaching her the secret family recipe that had been passed down from her own grandmother. She spent hours reading adventure stories with George, discussing the characters and their brave choices. She played endless games of peekaboo with Louis, filling their days with laughter even as sadness hung over everything. William watched his wife pour her remaining energy into their children, marveling at her strength even as he worried about her pushing herself too hard. She seemed determined to pack a lifetime of mothering into whatever time she had left, and he understood the fierce urgency behind her actions. She was creating a foundation of love and memory that their children could build upon for the rest of their lives. The palace staff had become an extended family during this time, providing practical support and emotional comfort in countless small ways. The nanny helped facilitate the special one-on-one time Kate wanted with each child. The household staff ensured that family meals remained peaceful and that the children's routines stayed as normal as possible. Even the security team found gentle ways to give the family privacy for their most precious moments together. Kate also began the difficult process of recording videos for future occasions, birthdays, graduations, weddings, and moments when her children might need to hear her voice. She sat in her bedroom late at night, speaking to future versions of George, Charlotte, and Louis, offering advice and encouragement for challenges she wouldn't be there to help them face. The recordings were both a gift and a torture, allowing her to imagine being present for milestones while confronting the reality that she would miss them. William started taking photographs obsessively, understanding that these images would become treasures beyond measure. He captured Kate braiding Charlotte's hair, helping George with his homework, chasing Louis around the garden. He photographed quiet moments too. Kate reading by the window, sleeping peacefully in their bed, laughing at something on television. Every image was a small act of love, a way of holding on to moments that were slipping away too quickly. The children began to change in ways that broke their parents' hearts. George became protective of his mother, walking more carefully near her and offering to help with simple tasks. Charlotte started leaving little drawings and notes for Kate to find, as if trying to leave pieces of her love everywhere. Louis seemed to understand that hugs were especially important now, offering them freely and frequently to everyone in the family. As the weeks passed, the family found themselves living in a strange space between normal life and impending loss. They still did homework and had family dinners and watched movies together, but everything was touched with extra significance. A casual conversation about future plans might suddenly become emotional. A simple bedtime story might turn into a discussion about love lasting forever. Every ordinary moment carried the weight of being potentially one of the last. Kate and William also had to begin the process of telling the wider world about her condition. They crafted careful statements with their communications team, wanting to prepare the public while maintaining some privacy for their family's grieving process. They knew that once the full truth was revealed, their private pain would become a public story, and they wanted to control that narrative as much as possible to protect their children. The response from around the world was immediate and overwhelming. Messages of love and support poured in from heads of state, celebrities, and ordinary people whose lives Kate had touched through her charitable work. Flowers began appearing outside palace gates, and prayer services were organized in communities around the globe. The outpouring of affection was both comforting and heartbreaking, a reminder of how many lives Kate had touched and how many hearts were breaking alongside their own. The announcement of Kate's condition sent shockwaves around the world. When the palace released the carefully worded statement explaining the severity of her illness, news channels across the globe interrupted their regular programming. Social media exploded with messages of support, prayers, and shared grief from people who felt they knew Kate personally despite never having met her. In London, crowds began gathering outside Buckingham Palace and Kensington Palace, leaving flowers, cards, and small gifts. The scene was reminiscent of the outpouring after Princess Diana's death, but this time it was filled with hope mixed with heartbreak. People came to show their love for a woman who had spent years showing love to them and their communities. The Queen, despite her advanced age, made the journey to spend time with her granddaughter-in-law and great-grandchildren. The visits were private and deeply emotional, filled with conversations about duty, family, and legacy. Kate found comfort in the Queen's steady presence and practical wisdom, while the children took solace in their great-grandmother's gentle affection and the stability she represented. Charles and Camilla also became frequent visitors, with Charles taking on additional royal duties to ease the pressure on William and Kate. The relationship between Charles and Kate had always been warm, and now it deepened into something profound as he watched his son face the possibility of losing the love of his life. Camilla, who understood the challenges of being a royal spouse, offered Kate a unique kind of support and understanding. Kate's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, practically moved into the palace during this time. They helped with the children's daily routines, provided emotional support to William, and gave Kate the comfort of being surrounded by the people who had loved her longest. Her siblings, Pippa and James, also became constant presences, bringing normalcy and family warmth to days that often felt surreal. The children's school had been informed about the situation, and teachers and administrators rallied around George and Charlotte with extra care and attention. Their classmates, guided by sensitive adults, found touching ways to show support, making cards, organizing special prayers, and ensuring that the royal children felt surrounded by friendship during this difficult time. Kate insisted on continuing some of her charitable work, understanding that it gave her purpose and allowed her to say goodbye to causes close to her heart. She made a final visit to the children's hospital where she had volunteered for years, spending time with young patients and their families. The visit was deeply moving, as children who were fighting their own battles offered Kate encouragement and love. Her final royal engagement was at a women's shelter that she had supported since becoming a royal. Kate spent hours talking with the women there, sharing stories, offering encouragement, and listening to their struggles. Many of these women had faced their own seemingly impossible challenges, and they understood Kate's fight in ways that others couldn't. The mutual support and respect shared that day created bonds that would last far beyond Kate's lifetime. William struggled with the balance between supporting Kate and managing his own grief. He found himself angry at times, at the unfairness of their situation, at his helplessness, at the world continuing to turn normally while his was falling apart. Friends and family gently encouraged him to seek support from counselors who specialized in grief and loss, understanding that he needed help processing emotions that felt too big to handle alone. The couple began having conversations about practical matters that they had never imagined needing to discuss. Kate shared her wishes about the children's upbringing, her hopes for their education and character development, and her thoughts about maintaining connections with her family and friends. They talked about how William might eventually find love again, a conversation that was excruciating but necessary in Kate's mind for his future happiness. Kate also spent time with her closest friends, women who had been part of her life since school and university days. These friendships provided a connection to the person she had been before becoming a royal, and her friends treasured these final conversations about shared memories, inside jokes, and the dreams they had once shared for the future. The palace staff began noticing small changes that indicated Kate's condition was progressing. She tired more easily during events, needed more assistance with daily tasks, and sometimes seemed to fade away mentally before returning to full engagement. William became increasingly protective, carefully monitoring her energy levels and ensuring she had the support she needed. Photography sessions became more frequent as the family tried to capture as many memories as possible. Professional photographers worked with the family to create portraits that would become treasured keepsakes, but it was often the candid moments captured on phones and cameras that proved most precious. These images showed a family determined to keep loving and living even in the face of loss. Kate began the difficult process of saying goodbye to extended family members and close friends. Each conversation was carefully planned to provide closure while avoiding the feeling of a final farewell. She wanted people to remember her as vibrant and full of life, not as someone diminished by illness. These meetings were deeply emotional, but also filled with laughter and shared memories. The international response continued to be overwhelming. World leaders sent personal messages, celebrities shared tributes on social media, and ordinary people organized prayer vigils and fundraising efforts for research into Kate's condition. The love and support provided comfort to the family, while also adding pressure to handle their grief with grace under intense public scrutiny. Medical teams worked around the clock to keep Kate comfortable and to explore any possible treatments that might help. While cure was no longer a realistic hope, the focus shifted to ensuring her remaining time was as peaceful and meaningful as possible. The doctors and nurses became trusted members of the extended support system, providing not just medical care, but emotional support for the entire family. Kate's faith became an increasingly important source of strength during this time. She spent quiet hours in prayer and reflection, finding peace in her beliefs about love continuing beyond death, and in the hope that her suffering had meaning and purpose. Religious leaders from various denominations reached out to offer spiritual support, and Kate found comfort in conversations about faith, hope, and the nature of love that transcends physical existence. William began the painful process of imagining life after Kate. He couldn't fully comprehend what single parenthood would look like or how he would manage his royal duties while caring for 3 grieving children. The support system around him assured him that he wouldn't face these challenges alone, but the prospect of making major decisions without Kate's wisdom and partnership felt overwhelming. The couple created new traditions during this time, understanding that these might be their last opportunities to establish family memories. They started having weekly family movie nights where each child could pick the entertainment. They began taking evening walks in the garden, talking about the day and sharing gratitudes. These simple rituals became sacred time that the children would remember and potentially continue long after their mother was gone. The final weeks brought a bittersweet intensity, to every moment. Kate's condition had progressed to the point where she spent most of her time at home, surrounded by family and the things she loved most. The palace had been transformed into a space of comfort and peace, with Kate's bedroom overlooking the rose garden that had become symbolic of their enduring love. William rarely left her side now, conducting only the most essential royal business and delegating everything possible to other family members. He had become not just her husband, but her primary caregiver, helping with daily needs and ensuring she was comfortable and surrounded by beauty. Their love, always strong, had deepened into something almost sacred during these final days together. The children had adjusted their routines to spend maximum time with their mother. George would do his homework in Kate's room, occasionally asking for help with problems and sharing stories about his day. Charlotte had moved a small desk into the room where she worked on art projects, creating drawing after drawing that she left around the space like love notes. Louis often napped curled up next to Kate, his small hand holding tightly to hers even in sleep. Kate's parents had essentially moved into the palace, taking over many of the household management tasks to ensure the family could focus on being together. Carol spent hours sitting with Kate, sometimes talking about memories from Kate's childhood, sometimes just holding her daughter's hand in comfortable silence. Michael often read aloud from books Kate enjoyed, his familiar voice providing comfort during difficult days. The medical team had set up equipment to keep Kate comfortable, but they worked invisibly, ensuring that the family's final time together felt as normal and peaceful as possible. Hospice nurses became trusted friends, providing not just professional care, but emotional support for everyone in the household. Their experience with families facing loss proved invaluable in helping William and the children navigate this uncharted territory. Kate used her remaining energy for the things that mattered most to her. She recorded final video messages for each child to be opened on their 18th birthdays. She wrote letters for William to read on their future wedding anniversaries, wanting to continue celebrating their love even after death. She organized photo albums with captions and stories, creating tangible books of memories for her family to treasure. The public vigil outside the palace had grown into something extraordinary. People from around the world had traveled to London to be part of this collective expression of love and support. The crowd was respectful and peaceful, creating an atmosphere of shared hope and prayer. Many brought pictures of Kate from her years of public service, creating an outdoor gallery celebrating her life and impact. Religious leaders from multiple faiths had organized prayer services around the world. Churches, mosques, synagogues, and temples held special services for Kate and her family, demonstrating how her kindness and compassion had touched people across religious and cultural boundaries. The prayers provided comfort to William and Kate, who felt supported by this global community of love. Kate's closest friends organized a quiet gathering in her room, bringing photo albums and sharing favorite memories. They laughed together about university adventures, early dating stories, and the adjustments to royal life that had sometimes been challenging but always manageable with friendship and humor. These women had been Kate's anchor to her pre-royal identity, and their presence provided continuity between all the different chapters of her life. William found himself memorizing everything about Kate, the way she laughed at their children's jokes, how she still tried to style her hair even when she was very weak, the particular way she said his name when she needed something. He understood that these details would become precious treasures in the years ahead, and he wanted to capture every nuance of the woman he loved. The couple had difficult conversations about Kate's funeral arrangements, with Kate insisting that the service should celebrate life and love rather than focus on loss and sadness. She wanted music that had been meaningful to their family, readings that spoke to hope and continuity, and a tone that would comfort their children rather than overwhelm them with grief. These planning sessions were heartbreaking, but also provided Kate with peace knowing that her final public appearance would reflect her values and faith. Kate also worked with William to plan special ways to keep her memory alive for their children. They created a foundation in her name that would continue supporting the causes closest to her heart. They planted new trees in the garden that the children could watch grow and care for as living memorials. They established traditions like annual family trips to places that had been meaningful to Kate, ensuring that her presence would continue to shape family experiences. The Queen made several private visits during these final weeks, spending quiet time with Kate and offering the wisdom of someone who had faced many losses during her long reign. Their conversations touched on duty, faith, and the ways that love continues even after death. The Queen's presence provided both comfort and a sense of historical continuity, linking Kate's story to the long tradition of royal service and sacrifice. Kate's brothers-in-law, Harry and other royal family members, made special efforts to spend time with her and to support William during this period. Old disagreements and tensions seemed insignificant in the face of impending loss, and the family came together in ways that reminded everyone of the bonds that truly mattered. These visits brought laughter and normalcy to days that could otherwise have been overwhelmed by sadness. The palace staff had become a second family during this time, providing not just professional service but genuine care and affection. The longtime employees who had watched Kate grow into her royal role now found ways to show their love and support during her final weeks. Their steady presence helped maintain routines and normalcy for the children while allowing the immediate family to focus on their final precious time together. Kate began having periods of less consciousness, times when she would sleep deeply or seem to be somewhere far away. During these moments, William and the children would sit quietly nearby, sometimes reading aloud, sometimes playing soft music, sometimes just holding her hands and being present. Even when she couldn't respond, they felt that she could sense their love and presence. The final week brought a change in the atmosphere around Kate. There was a sense of approaching transition, a feeling that she was beginning to let go of her earthly concerns and preparing for whatever came next. She slept more but, when awake, was peaceful and surrounded by love. The family adjusted their expectations and simply focused on being present with her for whatever time remained. William struggled with the reality that their last conversations might have already happened, that he might have said his final words to the woman who had been his partner in everything. He found himself whispering continuous declarations of love and gratitude, hoping that somehow Kate could hear and understand how much she had meant to him, and how her love would continue to guide him in the years ahead. The morning came quietly, with early spring sunlight filtering through the windows of Kate's room. William had spent the night in a chair beside her bed, holding her hand and watching the gentle rise and fall of her breathing. The children had fallen asleep nearby, having refused to leave their mother's side. The medical team had indicated that this might be their final day together, and no one wanted to waste a precious moment. Kate woke briefly as the sun reached her face, and for a moment her eyes were completely clear and focused. She looked at William with all the love they had shared over their years together, and he understood that this was her goodbye. She managed to whisper words of love to him and asked him to tell the children how proud she was of them and how much she would always love them. One by one, the children were gently awakened so they could have final moments with their mother. George, understanding the gravity of the situation with his 11-year-old wisdom, held Kate's hand and promised to take care of his siblings and to make her proud as he grew up. Charlotte climbed carefully onto the bed and snuggled close to her mother, whispering secrets and receiving whispered responses that would remain between mother and daughter forever. Little Louis, not fully comprehending what was happening but sensing the solemnity of the moment, gave his mother gentle kisses and told her he loved her to the moon and back, using their special phrase. Kate smiled at each of her children, imprinting their faces in her heart, and trying to convey in her gaze all the love and hope she held for their futures. The extended family gathered quietly in the room, creating a circle of love around Kate. Her parents held her hands and whispered final words of pride and gratitude for the joy she had brought to their lives. William's father and stepmother offered prayers and blessings, while other family members simply stood in supportive presence, understanding that this was sacred time. As the morning progressed, Kate became peaceful and still, surrounded by everyone who loved her most. William never left her side, continuing to hold her hand and speak softly of their love and the beautiful life they had shared together. The children remained close, drawing comfort from being together as a family during this transition. The moment of Kate's passing was gentle and peaceful, occurring as she was surrounded by whispered words of love and the presence of her most cherished people. William felt the exact moment when she left them, a change in the energy of the room that was both devastating and strangely beautiful. The children understood immediately that something profound had changed, and they came together in a family embrace that would sustain them through the difficult days ahead. The immediate hours after Kate's death were handled with careful planning and deep sensitivity to the family's needs. The children were given time and space to process their loss, surrounded by family members and counselors who could help them begin to understand their new reality. William, despite his own overwhelming grief, focused on ensuring his children felt safe and supported during this traumatic transition. The public announcement of Kate's death was made several hours later, allowing the family private time to begin their grieving process before sharing the news with the world. The statement was simple and dignified, focusing on Kate's peaceful passing surrounded by love and requesting privacy for the family during their time of mourning. The world's response was immediate and profound. News channels around the globe interrupted programming to announce Kate's death, and social media filled with tributes from world leaders, celebrities, and ordinary people whose lives had been touched by her kindness and service. The outpouring of grief and love provided some comfort to William and the children, helping them understand that Kate's impact had been far-reaching and meaningful. The crowds outside the palace grew exponentially as people came to pay their respects and leave flowers, cards, and mementos. The scene was reminiscent of the mourning for Princess Diana, but it carried a different quality. This was grief for someone who had been allowed to live her full story, who had been celebrated and appreciated during her lifetime rather than mourned only after tragedy struck. The Queen released a personal statement about Kate's death, praising her dedication to family and service while expressing the royal family's profound grief at losing someone who had brought such joy and grace to their lives. The statement struck the right balance between public duty and private sorrow, acknowledging the nation's loss while respecting the family's need to grieve. Plans for Kate's funeral began immediately, with careful attention to her own wishes for a service that would celebrate life and love rather than focus primarily on loss. The children were included in age-appropriate ways in the planning process, helping them feel connected to honoring their mother's memory while beginning to process their grief. The funeral itself became a global event, with representatives from around the world coming to pay their respects to a woman who had touched countless lives through her compassion and service. The service was beautiful and dignified, filled with music and readings that had been meaningful to Kate and her family. The children's participation was handled with extraordinary care, allowing them to honor their mother while protecting them from overwhelming public scrutiny. William's eulogy for Kate was deeply moving, focusing on her roles as wife, mother, and public servant while sharing personal memories that helped the world understand the woman behind the public figure. He spoke of her laughter, her dedication to their children, her passion for helping others, and the love that would continue to guide their family forever. In the weeks following the funeral, William and the children began the difficult process of creating a new normal without Kate. The support system that had formed during her illness continued to provide practical and emotional help as they navigated grief while maintaining royal responsibilities and normal childhood routines. The foundation established in Kate's name began its work immediately, continuing the charitable causes that had been closest to her heart. The children found comfort in participating in these efforts as they grew older, feeling connected to their mother's legacy and values through service to others. Years later, the garden where Kate and William had shared so many precious moments continued to bloom with the roses she had planted. The children grew up understanding that their mother's love was present in many forms, in the beauty surrounding them, in the kindness of people who remembered her, in the charitable work that continued in her name, and, most importantly, in the love that bound their family together. William eventually found ways to honor Kate's memory while building a life that she would have wanted for him and their children. The love they had shared became a foundation for future happiness rather than a limitation, just as Kate had hoped. Their children grew up secure in the knowledge that they had been deeply loved by both parents and that Kate's influence would guide them throughout their lives. The story of William and Kate's final goodbye became a testament to the power of love to transcend even death, showing the world how grace, dignity, and deep affection could transform even the most heartbreaking circumstances into something beautiful and meaningful. Their tearful farewell moved the world because it demonstrated the very best of human love, selfless, devoted, and eternal.